The most interesting part for me was that we had scope to experiment. So, for instance, I just read an article on Industrial Logic's website called Stop Using Story Points. And the essence of it was how they came up with a notion of variable length iterations. And I was really keen to try it. So that's like one of the experiments that we're currently running. And I call them experiments because if it turns out a couple of iterations in that this isn't working, then we agreed, hey, let's pull out of that experiment. And we can always fall back to traditional Scrum or XP at any point. And we all know how to do that. But what's exciting for me is to say, hey, let's try something different. And so far, I think it's working out. What do you think?
I was really excited when you brought that particular experiment, variable iterations to start with. When you brought that experiment because as coaches, this one here, as coaches, when we've been out in the field, I know for myself, helping teams come over to using Scrum and all these practices, one of the things they tend to feel bound in is these strict 2-week or 3-week, whatever they decide on, iterations. And so I was really excited when you brought that to us, and I wanted to see how it was going to turn out. And I think it was nice to have a product owner who was willing to try this as well. And I think on that first one, it worked pretty well, and it was exciting to see how that would work 2 or 3 down the line. And now I think we've just completed the third. Was that the third iteration? Where we did variable length. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we even mean by variable length as iteration as opposed to some other kind of iteration?
Cool. So variable length iteration is, instead of making iteration constrained by time, we said, why don't we make the constraint the actual work? So it's similar to an iteration where you say, well, let's pull in what we think we can do in 2 weeks. In that we're pulling work in, but we're not, and we're trying to keep it short still. But rather than saying, oh, look, the work we've got, we've still got some buffer, we better pull in another story to pad it out to 2 weeks. Or we've got too much work for 2 weeks, okay, we're going to have to split this story so that we can deliver part of it. So instead of forcing those unnatural or unintuitive mechanisms, we said, why don't we stay with what's more intuitive and saying, all right, what's the goal? So in Scrum, we talk about the sprint goal. So we say, well, what's the iteration goal? And then, okay, what are the stories that match that goal? Let's take that on and make that the iteration.
Yeah, I think in the past, we've always talked about either a theme for the sprint or an iteration goal, a goal or a theme for the sprint. And then we try to just pick stories that fit that. Right? Or I've been on lots of projects where we pick a bunch of stories until we feel like we're full for the 2-week sprint. Then we look at it and go, well, what's the theme? And then we're like trying to figure out
matching the theme.
Yeah, then you're trying to figure that out. So that's what's been really exciting about this one. We look at the backlog, we pull some stuff in, we start to talk about it and go, oh, well, what we're looking at here in these first 2 or 3 stories is kind of this. Some knowable, comprehensible theme or goal. And then we can stop right there and we say, well, wait a minute, that's a decent piece of work that we can get our head around. It's not going to take a day to do that. It's probably not going to take a month. Right in there, that looks like a chunk of work that we can all get our heads around. Let's call that an iteration.